Uh, we were raised by amazing people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty, like you said, the people you stand on. My mother, I was raised by my mother, grandmother, and great grandmother, as many people know. You had an amazing mom, dad, siblings. I mean, the great thing is your family kept you in check. Now, your family kept me in check too. When I was young,
your mother kept me in check too. Now that she's
oh
one of
yeah,
the few. Yeah.
I tell that story about my mom just real quick about lying.
I gotta remember this, man.
No, my mother was the type of person that if she said something and she knew it was a lie, she'd tell you were lying. She'd make you be out that person. But the great thing is, you always treated my mother with respect because you were brought up to treat people with respect. I think that's one of the big things too. If you come from a family that's angry, if you come from a family that's a bunch of, and I use this, I grew up in a trailer trash, redneck, doesn't matter the color of your skin. You take on what your parents saw because that's the only person you know. You become your parents because you look up to your parents. How do you feel that people can change that if your mom and dad are just worthless human beings and they don't give a shit about humanity or other people? They're just doing their own thing. How does a child in any community work through that? Because I know you work with kids and you're very good with that.
Yeah, I look at people through the lens of what their possibilities are and what the projections are. So I could never depict anybody as trash or, trailer trash with white trash or black trash. I always looked at somebody through.
You're just a damn good person, Cliff. You know that.
The lens of their possibilities and where I could be in terms of meeting the need of that person at this time in their lives. And realizing, they know more trash than I am when it really come down to it, because I know me better than anybody else, brother. So I know where all the trash and trash bins are in my life, man. And believe me, there's plenty of them. And so, when with your mom to me was like a queen. She had dignity, but she wasn't like Queen Elizabeth or Queen Victoria. She was a feisty queen. She was one of those queens that you didn't want to get on the wrong side of. And so her and I had a good relationship because we could talk about stuff, personal stuff, and she would talk about you and everything, and that's when she thinks she loved about you. She said, that Dennis, he's something else. He's going to be the end of us all. But the one thing I like about my son is that he will not lie. And that's it. That's true, Dennis. I don't ever know you to lie, man. And I don't know if people want to hear all this kind of stuff. But it's good that, you have to have some kind of redeeming qualities to get you through this mess.
Well, I think the thing is we're raised by people. Look, you've been in my family for years. Phyllis, your kids, the Slaughters. I mean, Jesus, right. The whole thing. And if you look at the people you grow up with, even if your own family has issues, you tend to gravitate to those that care about you.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the whole thing. I think a lot of kids feel as if they're not cared about because maybe their parents are defeated. And when I'm saying this, I'm talking about people of color. I'm talking about women because, let's get real. The biggest minority in the world are women, the way they're treated.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's horrific the way it is. Not many people talk about that all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Because they say, women are their own worst enemies. Look, we're all our own worst enemies. Now, you working with women in the African-American community, what's the difference between the women when it comes, because you mentioned it earlier about men with mental health. What about the women? Because you're surrounded by women. You got a lot of love with women and you work with women.
Yeah, watch out now, because this thing gonna hit the world. So
you might have to move here.
we don't want to bring up old reputations, but anyway, I think women in the African American community have always been more progressive and more insightful in terms of mental health and so forth, and not only seeking it for themselves, but seeking it for their spouses, even though the spouses are very reluctant to go. And for their children. Now that has gotten better. I mean, it wasn't as good back then as I think it is now. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a great chasm, a great separation between the way Black women look at mental health and seeking it, definitely, and the way Black men do. I think Black men is still a stigma and so forth. Mm-hmm. Where Black women are a lot more progressive and open So that's my experience, definitely. That because I remember being pushed by it, and I was like, I've gone through some depression. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to admit it, and things you lose your parents, you go through some, and then I've lost a lot of people in my life. Like you said, mentoring young men and so mainly young men more than young women, but I've lost a lot of young men, man, especially Black young men over the years that every time I lose, it seems like Dennis, it's just like a part of me just gone that can never come back. It's just like we're sitting in a room, man, and the room is full of people, and then death walks in, grabs somebody, don't which one is going to grab somebody and walks out, but leaves a note, and the note says, "I will be back." And that's the kind of way, all of our lives are. It's not just my life. All of our lives are. We all have to have coping systems in order to get through that. And I get, I've been very fortunate as to my faith and being deep into my faith, even though I haven't I've been a rascal. I've been a rambunctious rascal, but I've always believed, and I know that he's always had his arms around me. So I know that I'm going to be here as long as he deems me to be here to do what it is that he has ordained for me to do. And that is to serve. That is to have conversations like this. Hopefully, if one person can get something out of this, then it was a success.
Well, I got to tell you, I get a lot out of this. Every time I talk to you, it's a whole different thing for me.